honking over there. You would turn to page 10 in your notebooks. That's about where I'm going to be. And that way, if you can't read that from where you're sitting, you can read it in your books. Something that Maria said earlier that I would like to go back to is that the biggest task we had as a group was to create what is that shared definition of good teaching. Everybody knows a good teacher. You hear that a lot. Well, so-and-so is a good teacher. Or someone says, well, I know good teaching when I see it. But what does that mean? What exactly is good teaching? That's what this is hopefully going to accomplish for us. On page 10, you will see a quick overview of domain 1 and 2. Domains are the general categories, and then each of those domains is broken down into standards, and the standards are the specifics. And we talked about this, I think it was Seth, I don't know where he is, that these are kind of like our power standards, if you will, of good teaching. So that's something we use with our kids, and now it's something we can use on ourselves, power standards. So these are the power standards of good teaching. One of my goals, since I am a classroom teacher, was that it had to be something that I could use myself. It needed to be something I could use as a self-evaluation tool, number one, because in all honesty, especially if you look at the old system, how often is your administrator coming in and actually talking to you in the language of the rubric? And then, of course, because I'm an English teacher, I use that state standard rubric all the time with my students and scoring their writing and their reading work samples. And it really changes the game when the kids know the language of the rubric. They know exactly what they're going to be evaluated against. And so I feel that, number one, a good teaching rubric is something that we as teachers can use ourselves as a self-evaluation tool and as a goal-setting tool. So that was a big priority for me. The other thing that was really important is that they needed to be clear and really concrete, and they needed to really open the door for objectivity. We wanted to try and remove a lot of that subjectivity. A lot of the fears that people have as well, if someone doesn't like me, how could they maybe use this against me? I've heard a lot of people say that. So this is supposed to kind of eliminate that and to be very clear cut. Okay, so here we have on page 10 the first two domains. Domain 1, planning and preparation for learning, is broken down into 3 standards, which are more specific. Standard 1, you have a strong knowledge of your content and your students. And then the sentence underneath that kind of takes the highly effective and just puts it into one sentence for you. Standard 2, the plans, alignment, and lessons. And then standard 3, assessment. And all that is what's happening behind the scenes as the teacher is preparing for teaching. So this is domain 1. And then domain 2 has to do with classroom management, what's happening in your classroom. Standard 4, as it says, is expectation. Standard 5, relationships and respect. Standard 6, socio-emotional. And standard 7, routines and efficiency. This hasn't been said yet, but I believe, but I would like to put it out there that in this first year we're focusing on domains 1, 2, and 3, and that would be standards 1 through 13. So in this first year, the probationary teachers, this is what they're really focusing on. For the contract teachers, setting your goals for your growth plans, this is what we're really focusing on. If you turn the page, on page 11, you'll see domain 3, which is delivery of instruction. And those standards are engagement and mindset, goals, connections and applications, clarity, repertoire, I really like that one, and differentiation. So we're focusing on 1 through 13. There are other domains, as you can see, monitoring, assessment, follow-up, community and family outreach, professional responsibilities, and so on and so forth. One of the things that we were challenged with is that the old way was Danielson, which had, I don't know, something like 50-something standards. Marshall actually had, I believe, 42. We took that down to 24, and we were pretty brutal. What is the most important stuff that makes somebody a good teacher, that is measurable, clear, objective, and easy to understand? So that someone can walk into your classroom and say, this is good teaching because this is what I can see. All right, so skipping over to page 13, we had a couple people on our group who were counselors, or one person who was a counselor, and as she kept reminding us, okay, this is all great for classroom teachers, but what about the other professional people that are educators on your campus? So you'll see on page 13, we stole some stuff from other schools, Springfield, thank you very much, and we created a very bare bones kind of look of what standards would apply to counselors, ELL, media specialists, but they don't all apply, and some of them will be designed, specifically for those groups as we kind of roll this thing out. But a lot of the standards in those domains that are for teachers, they're for everybody. Building relationships, having good rapport, being a professional person, fulfilling your school's mission, so on and so forth. Too fast. Okay. Now if you look at page 14. Page 14 is the rubric broken down into a lovely chart. And you can see on the far left column the domains and standards with their number next to them. And then going across the chart you have highly effective, which is given a number of 4, effective, and then improvement necessary and does not meet standards. So if we were just to take the planning and preparation, knowledge of content and students, okay. Standard 1. Highly effective would be an expert in the subject area and has a cutting-edge grasp of child development and how students learn. Effective would be knowing the subject matter well and having a good grasp of child development and how students learn. And then improvement necessary is somewhat familiar with the subject, has a few ideas of ways students develop and learn, and then does not meet standards, has little familiarity with the subject matter and few ideas of how to teach it and how students learn. And so hopefully one of the things you'll see is that there's a lot of, it's a lot to me, again, as the English teacher using the state rubric, it has that same kind of clarity of language. You can see pretty clearly how the 4 different categories break down. I personally really like that it doesn't say unsatisfactory and satisfactory. Those are kind of loose terms. This is a lot more concrete. You are not meeting these specific standards. And to me that's also a hopeful term because it doesn't say you can't, it's just that you're not, and then you need some help to get there. So that's important to me. So that's on page 14. You can see it continues through. If you turn to 15, you'll see the chart continues. I will not read all of it to you. That is not necessary. But on page 15 is the end of the first year's standards, 1 through 13. And those are the ones that we will be focusing on and that will be talked about the most. We felt they were the most important to teaching, the preparation and the actual implementation of highly effective teaching. All right. Which takes me to, yes, the shading. Okay, so you might have noticed that if we could go back one slide, I think it might be a little more obvious. Yes, you'll see that some of them are gray and some of them are yellow, and at first even I was like, why are some of them gray? Why are some of them yellow? It's just to delineate where one domain begins and ends. So on this slide, the top 3, domain 1, the next one, domain 2. So that helps to clarify that for you. And then of course the side is the other. Doesn't show up in your books because it's black and white. But you can highlight it at home and highlight it. Oh, you have it. We have a video. Okay.
All right. Now that you have an initial glimpse of what the rubric looks like and some of the domain and standards, we have a few videos to show you. And really what they're looking at is your observation. So what you'll be asked to do in this first video is to observe, and then has a question at the end on how you did observing. So